He seems almost timeless, unaffected by his world of broken bones and endangered lives, a world often chaotic and anxious. But in the midst of it all, there has been a rock in a stormy sea.
He's laid back and very relaxed, and in a situation of a great deal of confusion or anxiety, he's sort of an island of calmness.
I really think one of the most consummate gentlemen I've ever known. Harold, it's very evident if you know him, Harold was reared to be a gentleman, and in so doing, he has really become a gentle man.
This gentle man was born and raised in Shreveport. His great intellect was apparent early. He graduated from high school in 3 years, finished college early, and was through with medical school at the ripe young age of 23. And all the while, he still had time to court and eventually marry Catherine.
I thought he was wonderful, and I thought he was good looking, and he was ambitious and smart and had a wonderful personality. We got married at the end of his sophomore year in medical school, and we lived in New Orleans for 2 years and then came back to Shreveport.
And any place I hang my hat is home.
Dr. Harold Bicknell began the practice of medicine in 1952 at the Old Charity Hospital. He also spent time at the Shriners Hospital. Then, in 1958, he opened a private practice on Line Avenue and started having babies. The Bicknell brood would be all boys, 4 of them, who grew up in awe of the man in the white coat, who they saw only occasionally.
He was out early and home late. We would see Dad sometimes just a couple times a week. We'd have dinner every Thursday night and every Sunday lunch after church.
When I was little, apparently, I mistook Don Owen for my dad on TV, so I thought the two of them looked quite a bit alike. So
We'd commonly eat at 5:30 every day, and you know, we were growing boys and hungry, and we expected to eat at 5:30, and on his afternoon off, he commonly came in at 6:30 or 7.
Scott ended up finishing in orthopedics too, and he's doing a fellowship, but he used to say, he goes, you know, when I would scrub out and just watch Dad perform surgery, I thought, you know, he's good, he's my father, he's wonderful. But he said, once I finally studied and went through orthopedics and then saw him operate, I realized just how phenomenal he is. He said, and to think he's my father. Scott is so proud.
one of my professors in medical school recommended I did not go into orthopedics because of the standard set by my dad, that I would never be able to fill his footsteps.
So when did you do that? Tuesday.
There's seldom a day goes by that I don't see a patient who has been a former or current patient of his. I'm constantly being shown elbows, knees, ankles, and the comment is always, you know, when I went to see your dad, my leg was broken, my hip was bad, and you know, it really works great. And I get that on an almost daily basis.
You know, someone asked me the other day about, can you think of anything funny about Dr. Yeah, I really can't. He's, Harold is not the real serious type all the time, but he's not, it's almost beneath his dignity for you to when you think of Dr. Harold Bicknell to tell jokes or some things, you know, being funny about him. I will tell you one story. I was sitting in the box with his family at the time he was crowned King of Cotillion, and he came out in this pair of leotards. And all I remember was his mother leaning over to his brother Albert, who was my dear friend also, and said, "Please, Albert, tell me that's not Harold."
couple of years ago, they were visiting us down at our beach house, and he had a little accident on the way down.
Everybody was okay. The car had to be towed off. It was, badly damaged, but the only damage to a human being was Catherine broke a fingernail. And so she was very upset, visibly shaken. All the others seemed to be fine. And I said, Catherine, what's the matter? I said, you can get the car fixed and no one's hurt, so everything's going to be okay. And she said, I know, but she kept worrying, and so I finally said, what is it? What's bothering you? And she said, well, when the cars crashed, Harold said a bad word.
That's the first one she'd heard him say in her 40-some-odd years of marriage.
One night we had a call from the jail. It was a patient calling him, and so he was surprised to get this phone call, and so he told the patient, said, well, put the jailer on the phone. And he said, well, what happened to him? Why is he in jail? And he said, well, he'd had a little bit too much to drink, and he kissed the meter maid. And so we picked him up, and he said you were the kindest man he knew, so he knew that you would come get him out of jail.
Men admire him and want to be his friend, but women love him. His daughter-in-laws, his 4 daughter-in-laws, love him to death. He is the perfect man. He's a great dancer. He has a really wonderful sense of humor. He's the most caring and compassionate man that there is.
I think a few adjectives that describe him best include consistent. He's always the same. He never changes. Unassuming. He never assumes anything for himself. Humble. I think he never even has an egotistical thought. And generous. I think he would do for others before he does anything for himself.
He's, as I say, very easy to get along with. In fact, almost too easy. He's very accommodating, and it's very easy to take advantage of somebody that's so accommodating. I mean, you do anything you want him to do, and if he's busy and in his office and doesn't have time to see somebody, and if I really need to have somebody seen, if I call him, he'll see him. And he'll manage it some kind of way.
The thing that's so important about Harold and his Mr. Clean, image is that in a world that's gone crazy, it's so wonderful to have someone like that young people can look up to. And we need role models, and Harold's a wonderful role model. What you see is what he is. He is really exactly the way you see him. He is Mr. Clean.
I had one of the internists stop me in the hallway and said, listen, I was just thinking about, I saw you and reminded me of your dad. And he said, it wasn't too long ago, it was a Christmas Day. He said, I was in the emergency room seeing a patient. And, I was in a real, bad mood that I had to be there working on Christmas Day. And I looked across the hallway, and there was your dad tending to an elderly lady who had broken her hip, just about to take her to surgery to nail back together probably the 5,000th hip that he had ever done, smiling, just looked like he would rather be nowhere else on earth than in that emergency room tending to that elderly woman with a broken hip. And that I do not believe is an exaggeration. Dad, being the soft-spoken guy that he is, he doesn't lead or teach by so much as what he says, is by what he does. He has totally dedicated his life to medical practice. He's had 3 sons follow in his footsteps. When I have somebody occasionally make the remark, he's a lot like his dad, I can think of no finer compliment than when somebody says that.
He is an unusual person. He is an ideal role model for junior achievement for many others to follow. He's Mr. Clean in every respect. He's just an exceptional human being. He is, I think, best described as a quiet man with strong credentials, and indeed, I think, a man for all seasons.